We're looking at the Common Assessment for Unit 2. We'll see an overview, we'll talk reading, writing, and some logistics. The assessment has 3 parts: reading, multiple choice, and writing. It's broken into 2 classes. Day 1, reading, multiple choice, and you'll start your narrative planning. Day 2 is going to be all about narrative writing and any leftover time for review. Let's look at day 1. Reading and multiple choice. So for reading, you're actually going to reread an excerpt from a chapter in A Long Walk to Water. So you're going to read part of the story we've already read in class. Note, there will be no note catcher. In other words, you're not going to be asked to take reading notes with 2-column notes or a fast write or any other note catcher. Your understanding of the text is going to be assessed on your multiple choice performance. So what's the focus for the multiple choice questions? 2 areas: vocabulary and context, and point of view. What do I mean by vocabulary and context for this test? Vocabulary and context is the skill of determining the meaning of a mystery word by using surrounding words, context. So first, you would highlight or find the mystery word. Second, find some context clues around the mystery word that help you figure out the meaning. Third, make a prediction. What do you think it means? Fourth, and last, use that prediction to guide you on the multiple choice. What option makes the most sense? So here's an example of how you could use context to figure out the word rebels. I underline some context, I write a prediction, those are the pink words there, and I might use that to help me on the question. What about point of view? To refresh, that means the perspective or voice from which a story is told. So if you get a point of view question, first ask yourself, what's the narrative perspective? First, second, third, and then ask yourself, what do I learn about the character's feelings or emotions from that narrative perspective? And really, when you get a point of view question, that's what it's asking you. Don't just stop at finding the narrative perspective. Ask yourself, what feelings or character emotions do I get access to from that perspective? So here's an example. This is a question we looked at once in class. What does page 7 reveal about Salva's point of view? This is when there's gunfire and violence right outside his classroom. You see the thought bubble there. This is a really good thinking question to ask yourself on a point of view question. What character feelings are revealed through the narrative perspective? All right, and you would finish day 1 after the reading and multiple choice by starting the narrative planning. So for the narrative, you actually get to choose the type of narrative planning and writing that you want. As I said, day 1 is all about planning, and day 2 is writing, all writing. But if you need, you can take a little time on day 2 to finish your plan. That's totally fine. Wait, you said I get a choice for my narrative writing. What's up with that? There are 3 options. Please look closely. Option number 1, we haven't done before. We're going to practice before the assessment. Option 1 means create or expand the moment. Here you extend a moment that's not really developed in the story. Look at the example down below. Naya's first water trip taking her little sister, Akir. Now, this is mentioned in the story, but the author didn't really develop that moment or really dive into it deeply. So maybe if you chose number 1, if you had a prompt like that, you would really develop that scene, maybe write a whole chapter based off that. Option 2, perspective change. Rewrite a scene from a different narrative perspective. You see the example underneath. Write chapter 1 from the teacher's point of view, first person. We have practiced switching up the narrative perspective. Option 3, continue the story. We've done that. That means logically continue the story from where it stops. So for example, that moment where Salva has to decide, will I join Mariel on the trip to Ethiopia or not? Now, Your choice impacts the way you use your story map to plan. So depending on which of these three options you pick, that might affect the way you use your story map. So here's a story map. I'm not going to go over every little part right here. You can certainly pause the video or come back and watch it later. But let's say you're doing that perspective change one. You would use the entire story map here as a way to recap the scene from the book. You're not inventing or creating anything new. You're just recapping the events, beginning, middle, and end from that scene. The only thing you're inventing or changing is the perspective, but you already know the events because the author wrote them all. But let's say you were doing the continuation, right? There's a number of ways you could continue the story. You're the storyteller, so you would make your own middle and end. That'd be your creation. So let's look at day 2, narrative writing and review. For the writing itself, you want to match the story elements from the original text. Keep in mind to slow down on key moments through sensory details, dialogue and thoughts, descriptive language, and really keep in mind you're only writing a short chapter or a section, a slice of a story. You're not trying to write a whole book here. Now let's finish by looking at some logistics for the test. You'll be taking your assessment on Edulastic. You should be familiar with this platform and you'll log in through Clever. But if that doesn't work, you can go to edulastic.com and use your Google account to log in. A couple notes. You start the assessment by clicking that button on the side. You can use a highlighter tool. There's even a process of elimination tool. For narrative option writing, look on the right. That's where you're actually going to do your narrative writing, after you plan, of course. On the left side of your screen, you'll see the options. It's kind of cut off. You can't see them all, but that's how it's laid out. To zoom in on that left side of the screen, there's also going to be a couple tabs. The reason for that is the 3 options, they might all be for different chapters. So maybe option 1, as you can see here, says, read chapter 8. So maybe tab 2, it would direct you to find chapter 8. But maybe if you pick option 2, that's based on chapter 3. So maybe you need a different tab to find that text as a reference. We're going to practice this, so don't sweat it if that's a little confusing. Note, you must do your story map to plan before you do your narrative writing. In fact, that's the one thing for the assessment you're doing not in Edulastic. The entire assessment's in Edulastic except for the story map. We're going to do that in Google Classroom. And when you're finished, don't forget to submit. And please, 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 please do not submit until you're 100% sure that you are done. We're going to get to practice. We'll do a practice assessment in just a moment. So you're going to get to see a lot of these tools and get a good look at Edulastic and how it would work with the English Common Assessment. If you want to go back and look at some tips like the story map or some techniques for strong narrative writing, you can find it on the English Basics 1-pager right there on the classwork page under additional materials. Thanks for watching.